The cost of living crisis on a global scale is indeed a thing. It is not a media beat up. And so you can see why customers, especially in Australia, are so attracted to the value for money in Chinese cars. In 2025 so far, we have bought nearly 142,000 Chinese cars. That's up 17% from the year before to the same period, beaten only by cars made in Japan and Thailand. So the Chinese are rapidly catching up, and Chery is one of those brands really pushing a lot of car for the money. The car we have here is the Chery Tiggo 4. It's entry-level, small SUV in its top spec form, hybrid, ultimate, 35 grand drive away. What I'm intrigued to know is the Tiggo 4 really a good car for that kind of money? Where does this car's origins come from? And should you be buying something else for that kind of price rather than this hybrid Chery that we have here? I'm Nathan Ponchard, and this is Chasing Cars.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
Budget Direct.
The Chery Tiggo 4 is an interesting case in point because it's not a new car. It's actually been around since late 2017, has run under at least a dozen different names, and this is the fourth facelift of this car. So it might be new to Australia. It's only been here for a year, and we've already had two versions of it, although the hybrid drivetrain is new. But when you start to piece together the car, you realize there's actually a lot of 2017 still in this vehicle, and maybe that's why they can get the value for money out of it. The core part of this car, meaning the doors, the sills, the door handle shape, all of that, and the internal dimensions and the platform are absolutely from 2017. But this is a prime example, arguably a benchmark example of smoke and mirrors, because even though we have an old car in the middle, this is the third new front, maybe the fourth, I think third new front for the Tiggo 4, and it has a brand new back. And even over here, where it used to just have a panel, it's got fake glass. That's not a window, that's just a garnish to make it look like it's got an even different window line. It is all about making it look fresh, and I actually think they've done a pretty good job. The front of it in particular, with these cool vertical DRLs here, and it has horizontal sequential blinkers in this ultimate hybrid version, makes it look actually quite classy. Admittedly, the 17-inch wheels in reality look nothing like they do in their AI CAD drawings that they have in all of their advertising. They look huge, and they are not huge. They're only 17-inch tyres, and you can see where they're saving a bit of money on the tyres themselves because they are called Salem E-Range Performance, ironically named Performance 215/60 R17 mud and snow tyres. Underneath, it's purely conventional, struts up front, torsion beam rear, front wheel drive, 1.5 litre petrol 4-cylinder, multi-point fuel injection, so it's kind of an old engine, combined with an electric motor. The engine itself has 71 kilowatts, 120 newton meters. The electric motor has 150 kilowatts and 310 newton meters. And so when we drive it, we'll see that it actually has quite a lot of performance, although Chery does not claim overall system numbers. It also has a 1.84 kilowatt hour battery. So all of that, just think a Chery version of a traditional Toyota hybrid, and that's what we have here. Where the garnishing of this 8-year-old design really works is at the back end. This rear treatment is new in Australia for 2025. This sort of C-D-pillar treatment that I've already spoken about, but also the whole tailgate here. It gives it this band across the back, blends the Chery lettering into it, and has this really quite cool rear light pattern. The LED lights at the back, sort of mirroring the LED lights at the front and adding really quite an amount of techie look. It actually looks quite expensive, given that we know what we're working with here. Even the paint on this car, it's called Martian Red Metallic. It's really lovely. It's beautiful and lustrous. It looks deep. It doesn't have any orange peel in it. It is surprisingly high quality for a car that you expect not to be that so much. But then when you start to dig in a little bit is where the Tiggo 4 starts to show a few cracks. And one of those is just this little aspect here. If you slam the back doors in this car, the whole entire boot goes poof and rattles and shakes. Like, I don't think I can remember any other car that really does that. Just a little bits and pieces like that. And when you get in the boot here, Chery says 470 litres of space, but it is all the way to the roof. There's another little surprise that this hybrid version has to present to everybody. Beneath the Chery's dazzling taillights, there is actually quite a lot of quality to like in here too. The carpet's kind of nice, there's no puckering on the back of the seat. It all seems put together pretty well. I suspect there's meant to be a luggage cover because this one is missing and it's got the clips on the rear tailgate here, but this press car does not have that. But what it does have is this unusual lump in the floor, and that is the battery. It's been relocated from the engine bay because this is now a hybrid with an electric motor, but it leaves this huge lump in the floor, which is unusual. This ultimate version of the Tiggo 4 hybrid costs $5,000 more, though I'm not entirely sure that the equipment it brings is worth $5,000. It does get synthetic leather, which I personally hate. It feels kind of clammy. I'd much rather the cloth in the base car, although it does get heating here, and the driver does get 6-way electric adjustment rather than all manual. It does get a 15-watt wireless charger down there, which is better than nothing, I suppose, even though it's very easy to forget your phone when it's buried underneath. It has 6 speakers in the stereo instead of 4, although trying to work out where they are is not so easy because I thought the one in the top of the dash was a phantom speaker, but it does have 2 kind of circular bits there, tweeters in the A-pillars, speakers in the bottoms of the front and back doors, but there are fake tweeters in the rear doors. They don't actually work, and I suppose that fits kind of the vibe of the Tiggo 4 itself, in that there's a lot of stuff here, that whole smoke and mirrors thing, to kind of make you feel like it's a modern, up-to-date, cutting-edge, well-equipped car, but ultimately it's all very superficial. It's more about just having the stuff there rather than feeling like it's luxurious, and among those things would be even the sunroof you get with the Ultimate. It's so small. I think if you drove off a bridge and landed in a lake and had to escape, my butt would not fit through that. That's how tiny it is. It's just not worth the effort. It gets a 360-degree camera and stuff like that, but the standard car already has front and rear parking sensors. It has walk-away lock and unlock on approach, and all that works kind of really well. I actually really like it. There are elements in here, though, that are actually quite nice. The top of this dash here with this sort of elephant grain material that is actually padded. It has a stitch that runs all the way through here. It's really nice and even. That actually looks really classy, really classy. This vinyl bit here, again, stitched really evenly through here, is slightly padded. Again, it adds a nice touch through there. All of the doors, front and back, have stitched and upholstered proper door grabs to pull them in. We can fit this entire SodaStream bottle in the driver's door here at actually a pretty good angle. It fits in there quite well. All of that stuff is probably surprisingly nice. The steering wheel in this top spec car does have premium, which I imagine means that it has this sort of leather look stitched thing around the edge here. It has 1 touch power windows for all 4 windows, which is not an expectation in these. Even in top spec MGHS doesn't have that. So it's something good for the Tiggo 4. We have 2 10.5-inch screens with wireless Apple CarPlay, which is relatively easy to use. The speakers, though, like, there are settings where you can do treble and bass and mid. They all sound terrible, regardless of where you put them. You just need to go into Archimus, where it sets up its own little staging, and choose either driver or interior. But even then, it sounds quite bright and very digital, though it is a lot better than if you try and set it up yourself. And I suppose that leads me to another thing about the interior. The stereo works in that it drowns out this sort of slightly irritating pressure that's going on in here. When you drive the Tiggo 4 and have all of the windows up, it feels like there isn't a pressure release, like you almost need to keep popping your ears. Like there's some uncomfortable weirdness about that, and perhaps that's why the boot does what it does when you slam the back door, because there isn't a proper pressure release in here. It goes away when you wind the windows down a bit, and you can drown it out with the stereo, but it is actually quite uncomfortable, and it's noticeable for every single person that has been in this car. Now, for the rest of it, it all actually works pretty well. It has a lot of safety features in here, including driver attention monitoring, but they've all been tuned for Australia, and they are all surprisingly not so annoying. It's just that on the move, the Tiggo 4 does start to fall down a bit. And even these seats, this one here, the 6-way, it doesn't have under thigh tilt. It only goes up and down at the back. And so when you're cornering, you're very much wedged in between the console and the door. The seat doesn't really give you a whole lot of support down the bottom. The seats look nice, but they're just not quite as grippy as they could be. And this one is sat very high. So if you're tall, the Tiggo 4 is probably not the car for you. This is very much about a raised hip position, a raised view ahead. Even the adjustable B-pillar belt thing here, I feel like is too low for me, and I'm only 5'10". So this is very much about smaller people, and I think they are the people who are going to much prefer being in this interior package. The back seat of the Tiggo 4 is a little bit different to the front in that you actually feel like you're sitting quite low rather than sitting quite high there. And I'm looking at these two seats, and that one doesn't have height adjustment, and they are a little bit out of alignment, that one being quite high for anyone who's sitting here. Now this base is kind of flat. I don't really have any under thigh support. The legroom's kind of okay sitting behind myself. The headroom's probably better than kind of okay, certainly here behind the dip of the sunroof here, so that doesn't affect anyone because it's so small. The trim here is all pretty nice too. It's all put together quite well, even though it is all vinyl, as we know. We've got proper door grips on the door to grab onto, and we've got grips in the roof that aren't damped, which is a surprise. You can only fit a little water bottle in the door though, but this is all kind of okay for kids. 2 map pockets, only one air vent to fight over though, and only one USB-A port down there, which kind of exposes the age of this car that is rapidly becoming obsolete for anyone who has even remotely new phones. The floor is pretty flat too, so that's not so bad for anyone sitting in the middle, but while this base cushion here is actually really quite nice, this is absolutely rock hard where the center armrest folds down. Now, as we've discovered, the Tiggo 4's interior is actually a lot better than you might think it's going to be, given the age of this car and the relative lack of expense of this car, certainly on paper anyway. But that sound that I mentioned, that pressure sound, is immediately obvious now that we're filming because none of the windows are open and the stereo's not on. It sounds like the interior is weirdly sealed, like I almost need to keep popping my ears, and it is tangible for everyone from the moment that you drive it. My voice almost seems a little bit echoey in here, and so I can't explain that really. It's just a little bit odd. There's like a little reverberation too as you drive along. Also not very comfortable is the ride of this car. Like, it's on fairly high profile 17-inch tires, 36 PSI all around, I checked that, but they often feel like they have 50 PSI in them. The ride can be really quite stiff and agitated and sort of jolts up and down. It doesn't make driving around town comfortable in this, even though the faster that you drive and the harder that you drive, so even on this track here, which is pretty smooth, you can still feel everything underneath it. It traces the road, which is not what you want in a small urban car like this. The steering too is kind of weird because while it's electric and it's all pretty light, currently I have it in sport. You can set it to match to the driving modes, or you can adjust it separately through the screen here, going through sort of driving assistance and have it on comfort. But in both cases, it is not really connected to anything. It's sort of sticky. It doesn't have really any kind of fluidity. And so when you're driving into a corner, you have this sort of dead zone about here where it doesn't have anything. And then once you get to a little bit further turned in, which we're about to because I'm coming up to a kind of a tight corner, once you need to get to kind of here before it really turns in. And then the car actually handles really quite well, surprisingly well. It can be surprisingly chuckable once you drive through the dead zone in the steering and the terrible grip of these tires. They are rubbish. They howl everywhere. If you try and drive this car delicately just on your fingertips and smoothly, the front end just completely washes out. You need to drive through that, and when it has that, you go, oh yeah, it's not so bad. No one's going to do that in the Chery. It's about being an efficient and comfortable urban car, and it doesn't really quite achieve that as well as it could either. The 1.5 multi-point injected petrol is relatively effective at moving it along. When you're at a standing start and you really kick it in, it really goes. Like, we'll give it a go. We'll slow down. We'll put it in sport mode, which it
has entered sport mode.
Tell you about. If I stop here and flatten it, yep, trying to get some grip, and then you get that sound, which someone said sounded like a cow giving birth, but you know, I don't know, at least you don't have to hear it like that all the time. Sport mode does ramp up the engine a lot quicker than Eco, and it is surprisingly quick. So, combined with this perversely entertaining handling and surprisingly quick drivetrain, the Tiggo 4 Hybrid can make really good time, but again, that is not what this is about. It should be about being
economy mode.
Thank you, being a comfortable urban car, and it just doesn't achieve that because it doesn't have the ride quality, it doesn't have the steering feel or the fluency. It's like every little aspect of it is not related to another aspect of the car. Sometimes the drivetrain, certainly in Eco, it takes a lot longer to wind up. I just flattened it and it uses the battery there, which is actually a lot more pleasant than the engine instantly soaring to 10,000 revs or whatever it was doing. If you go through here, again, the battery, it takes a lot longer to build and it keeps the engine at a lot lower revs, so it's just a lot more pleasant to be behind, and that is really quite nice. You can change the level of energy recovery intensity through one of the buttons in the screen, which doesn't automatically come on. You need to do it every single time, which again, no one is going to do. It's low, middle or high. Middle is probably the most preferable because it does have a degree of regenerative braking and it does replenish the battery, which, to be honest, in the 2 days of driving, this has stayed pretty much about halfway. It doesn't deplete it like it does seemingly in some of this car's competitors. It stays pretty consistently, so it gives you a consistent amount of strong performance. But this energy regeneration thing is just a little bit like a light switch. It's a bit on off, it's not quite as smooth, and yet without it, which is what it defaults to every time, the brakes are really quite wooden. You need to get used to what this car is going to be like. The first time you drive it, if you've been driving other cars, you'll instantly not brake to the line. If you're stopping at lights, you'll run straight over it because it just doesn't have that last little bit of retardation. You really need to press your right foot into the brake pedal to make it stop. As we mentioned earlier, the adaptive safety systems are surprisingly unobtrusive. They're still there and they still bong away, but they are nowhere near as horrendous as they are in something like a GWM Haval Jolyon Hybrid, which is borderline undrivable with its driver attention monitoring, certainly in the first version that I drove, whereas here it's relatively unobtrusive and you don't really need to turn them off. Although, like I mentioned earlier, with the steering assist, it's really the only time you feel like there's anything coming through the wheel, and that is when the car is fighting you a little bit with its lane assist rather than the absolutely zero level of steering feel that it has otherwise. And so sometimes in town I almost preferred to drive it with a lane assist on because I felt like I was connected to something. Otherwise you're sort of soaring away at kind of nothing at times, really just uncertain as to exactly where the front wheels are in a lane, which again takes away from the enjoyment of what should be a really good urban car. Now, the combined fuel consumption figure for the Tiggo 4 Hybrid is not particularly flash either. It's actually pretty much the worst of any of the efficient small SUVs. It's 5.4 litres per 100 kilometres, which is not so bad. The Volkswagen T-Cross is also 5.4, Skoda Kamiq also 5.4, but they're not hybrids. They're just regular 3-cylinder turbo petrol 1 litres. The Haval Jolyon Hybrid is 5.1. But when you get to the really good hybrids, like the Kona Hybrid is 3.9, the Yaris Cross Hybrid is 3.8, the Honda HR-V Hybrid is 4.2. These are all significantly better than this sort of slightly aging drivetrain of the Tiggo 4. That said, it is so much better than the regular turbo petrol, which is 7.4, which is again way down into categories much bigger than a small SUV. In reality, in our driving, we have averaged sort of around 5.4 driving in urban stuff, and this car over the last 50 kilometres, because that's all the trip computer will show, including all of the dynamic tests and everything, is averaging 6.7. So the Tiggo 4 Hybrid can be a really efficient city car. It's just not a particularly good city car. It's just not comfortable enough. It's not a nice enough place to spend time in, and given that the price that Chery is asking, which is currently 35 grand drive away, despite the fact that the 5-year servicing is only $1,500 and all that stuff, and it only takes 91 octane, all those things seem kind of good, but there are so many other small SUVs you could buy that are a lot more efficient, a lot more cohesive, a lot nicer to drive, and probably a lot better to live with over quite a long period of time than I suspect this Chery Tiggo 4 Hybrid is going to be. The Chery Tiggo 4 Hybrid Ultimate is an easy car to be attracted to, but it is a difficult car to like. Ironically, at the things that it should be best at, which is driving at moderate speeds and just pooling around town, it is not very good unless you drive really slowly and make almost no demands of your vehicle. This isn't a smooth and comfortable car to be in. And then it comes to the price, $34,990 drive away. I think you're much better off spending $29,990 drive away on the urban spec of this car that doesn't have the kind of inconsequential equipment that costs $5,000. And if you look at the competitors for the prices that they offer, like MG ZS Essence Hybrid, this car's main competitor is the same price, but that's a brand new car on a brand new platform with a brand new interior package, and it feels that way. The Chery feels like it's been molded into something of an era that was a long time ago for China car design, rather than what the MG is now. And if you look at what the European competitors are for the money, you can get a Skoda Kamiq Select, $33,990, sometimes drive away. Volkswagen T-Cross Life, $34,990, sometimes drive away. If you don't want a European car, Toyota Yaris Cross Urban, the top spec front drive Toyota hybrid that is massively more fuel efficient than this, is $36,930. Admittedly not drive away, but you never know. That's still really only ultimately a couple of grand more. A base Corolla Cross hybrid, $37,440 before on-road costs. You can even stretch into semi-premium nameplates. Honda HR-V Hybrid X is $39,900 drive away. Peugeot 2008 Allure Hybrid, $42,990. I feel like this Chery Tiggo 4 Hybrid Ultimate, especially in this top spec, is massively overpriced for what it delivers. This is a cheap car underneath that feels like a cheap car in a lot of ways, that is all about smoke and mirrors and superficiality in equipment and doesn't really give you what you want. Where it actually becomes the best car that it can be is when you wring every element out of the car. It's surprisingly okay to drive quickly, but no one's ever going to do that. You should not spend any more than 30 grand on a Chery Tiggo 4, and potentially you should not buy a Tiggo 4 at all. I would look at the MG ZS if I wanted a Chinese car, and we're not being paid by any manufacturer to say this. This is the absolute honest truth. But I don't think I could live with this car on a day-to-day basis unless I drove at such a slow pace that people on the road would probably want to run me off the road. Let us know what you think. I know this car is a popular car that's been selling really well. I know that people think otherwise. They didn't like our review of the petrol, and they're probably not going to like our review of the hybrid here. But this is what we're facing right now, and that's what that car's like. Kind of good on the surface, not so great underneath. Let us know what you think, and let us know what you think about chasing cars. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video and hit the notification bell. And thank you for listening and watching.